Hello guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Hit the bell icon button so that you don't miss out any tutorial.
So up until this point, we haven't really dealt with any server-side programming languages. We've dealt with JavaScript, which is a client-side language, along with data interchange formats like XML, JSON. But PHP is a solid server-side language that is used on many of the popular websites like Facebook, Twitter. It's used a lot, and it goes really well with MySQL, which is a relational database, and we'll be discussing MySQL in the next chapter, and PHP and how they go together. So in this chapter I just want to go through pretty much the basics of PHP and how variables and arrays are created, loops, things like that. So PHP stands for PHP Hypertext Preprocessor, and it was created by a programmer named Rasmus Lerdorf in 1995. Like I said, it's a server-side language, so what that means is that everything is done on the web server as opposed to the client's computer. All the decision making, conditionals, things like that is all done on the server. And it's very handy because it can be directly embedded into HTML by using these PHP tags. So you'd have the opening tag here, and then all the PHP, and then the closing tag. And you can output things. You can echo out values, like say in JavaScript we have the document.write method. In PHP you have the echo. It's free and open source, which is always good. There's a ton of documentation at php.net. It's a loosely typed language. It's not strict like, say, Java or C# or something, or any of those types of languages. And again, it works very well with MySQL, as well as some other database systems, Postgres and Oracle. I think it can work pretty well with. I've never used them. I always used MySQL, but it's pretty compatible. Let's see. It's mostly used with MySQL. It creates a user-friendly interface when dealing with data. PHP can generate web content, or HTML. You can use command line scripting. PHP can be used to build desktop applications, although that's not really, it's not a popular thing. PHP is mostly, it really shines on the web. It can be used as a object-oriented language or as a procedural language. When PHP first came around, it was mostly procedural, but nowadays it's really recommended that you do things in an object-oriented fashion. It's just more secure, it's more reusable, and it's just better programming. So to embed PHP inside an HTML document is extremely easy. Here we have an H1 tag, a paragraph, another paragraph where we have written by, and then an opening PHP tag, and then we're echoing out a variable. Like I said, echo is similar to document.write in JavaScript. It's just going to print something out on the screen. And then we have the semicolon, much like JavaScript, although in JavaScript you don't need the semicolon, in PHP you do. And then we have the closing tag. So it's very easy to embed, which makes it a real desirable language. So variables, loops, arrays, all the programming basics are available in PHP. So pretty much everything that we went over in JavaScript will be going over in PHP. And there's some things just have very little difference, but of course it's important and needed. For instance, a variable needs to have a $sign at the beginning of it. Okay, so in JavaScript this would just be my var. In PHP we need this $sign. Alright, so we can assign strings, integers, arrays, much like JavaScript. arrays, we can also have associative arrays, which are extremely helpful. So we can create an array and we can give it a key. So we have name as a key and then a value. In this case is Brad. Okay, so it's also known as a hash. If you've worked with Ruby on Rails or some other languages, this is sometimes called a hash. In PHP, they're called associative arrays. Loops, we have for, while, do while, and for each, which is used for arrays. Like in JavaScript, we use a for in PHP, we use a for each. Functions, objects, we can do all that stuff in PHP, and we will be doing all that in this chapter. Object-oriented programming in PHP is it really shines when you use objects. This is an example. Of course, it's a hypothetical example, as we have a class of dog. So all objects they belong to a class. Here we have some properties. Okay, so classes can have properties. In this case, our class of dog has two properties, one of breed and one of color. Alright, so those are properties. Now we can also have methods. Objects have methods. So for instance, we have a method called bark. And by the way, a method is just a function that's inside of a class. It's just a function. And in this case, this function is just going to echo out bark. And you might see these private and public. These are access identifiers. And what this means is if it's private, you cannot access this property outside of the class. Okay? If it was public, you could directly access it. You could assign a value to it or whatever. What's popular to do in PHP is to have your functions or methods be public, and you use a function to access your properties instead of just accessing them directly. So if we want to instantiate an object from a class, we would create a variable, and it would be equal to new and then the class name, which is dog. And then to call a method, we could use the variable and then the dash and then a greater than and then the method name. Alright, so this is how we would call the bark function or method. Okay, and we'll definitely get into more of this as the chapter goes on. So PHP is a server-side language, and it should go without saying that we need a server. So we can't just parse PHP simply on our desktop or in our Windows or Linux machines. We need to have some kind of server. With JavaScript, we could just put it right into an HTML file and just use it right on our desktop. So you have a couple options. You can use your hosting, your private web or whatever, whoever you use for a web host or dedicated server or something like that, or you could use a platform like XAMPP or WAMP, which will give you an Apache server, PHP, and MySQL all on your, in this case would be our Windows machine. Okay, so I'm going to go over how to install that. We're going to install XAMPP, but again, you can use your web server. So to download XAMPP, we want to go to apachefriends.org, and you just click on XAMPP, and we want XAMPP for Windows, and it's available for Mac and Linux. So what this includes is Apache, MySQL, PHP 5.4, PHPMyAdmin, which we use to interact with the database, and then FileZilla, and this stuff we don't really care about right now. We already have FileZilla installed. This is a server. This is the FileZilla server. And we also have a control panel which we can admin all this stuff. So it's really good. It's open source and it's free, so that's always good. So So what I'm going to do is go down to download, and I'm going to download XAMPP, and I'm going to download the installer. Okay, I'll just save that. And it's a pretty big file. It's almost 100 megabytes, so it might take a few minutes. I'm actually going to pause the video and come back when it's done. Alright, so our XAMPP file is now downloaded. So I'm going to go to that. And it's just going to install just like any other Windows application. Alright, so this is just giving us a warning that we're using the user account control system on Windows. You can go to Control Panel and shut it down or shut it off, but I'm just going to leave it because there shouldn't be any issues. So we're just going to run through the wizard. You can install everything here if you want, but I'm actually going to leave out Tomcat, Mercury Mail Server, and FileZilla. Okay, I'll keep everything else. And I'm just going to use the default location. I'm not sure what this Bitnami is. I've never seen this. I don't really care. So this will just take a minute. Alright, so now we're getting a pop-up that's requesting permission through the firewall. I'm just going to say allow access. Alright, so now it's asking if we want to start the control panel. We're going to keep that checked and click finish. So this is the control panel. If you remember, I opted not to install these three. So Apache and MySQL is all we really need here. Now we're actually seeing an error here that Apache will not start because port 443 is in use. I think that this has to do with the UAC, the user access control in Windows. So I'm going to actually disable that. I'm going to go to Control Panel. I think it's in System and Security. User Account Settings. I'm going to drag this down to the bottom, Never Notify. Click OK. Now let's try to restart the... I guess we got to restart the actual machine. So I'm just going to restart. And now we're back, and I'm going to go to my XAMPP control panel, and hopefully that error is cleared up. Looks like it is. Alright, so what I'm going to do is we can choose to start and stop the Apache and MySQL services if we want, or we can install them as a core service that will start with Windows and will always run. So I'm going to do that by clicking on these X's. And we can still start and stop from here. So I'm going to start both. Alright, so now on our local machine we have Apache running with the latest version of, I think it's the latest version of PHP installed, and we have a MySQL database. So if we go to computer, the default installation of XAMPP is right in the C drive, and if we click on the XAMPP folder we see a bunch of other folders, and this is basically our web server. We have PHP installed, we have Apache, we have MySQL, Perl, all kinds of stuff. So The folder that we want to use for our websites and web applications is the htdocs folder, and that's equivalent to your public HTML or your www folder. So this is where we want to build our applications, and by default we already have some stuff in here. Alright, so we have some images, our favicon, and let's just go to, you can access your server in two different ways. You can use 127.0.0.1, or you can just use localhost. Okay, and by default, when you install XAMPP and you go to localhost, it redirects you to the XAMPP folder, which is right here, and to the splash.php page, which is right here. Now you don't need to do, you can get rid of this XAMPP folder if you want and then just access the root of your server, but we're going to use this little panel for a minute. So we want to click on our language, in my case is English, and we have a couple things here we can do. We can access PHPMyAdmin from here, FileZilla if we installed it, and some other stuff, but what we need to do is click on security. And right now our MySQL admin user does not have a password, and we are on a local machine, so you don't really need it, but I would definitely suggest just getting in the habit of giving your database a password, your database user a password. So it's very easy. All you have to do is click on this link here and select a password. Alright, so looks good. I'm just going to click on password changing. Alright, so it was successfully changed. Now we have to restart MySQL, and that's easy. All you have to do is click stop and start. Alright, and we can also access PHPMyAdmin. I'm not going to go into it now because we actually have a section dedicated to this stuff, so but we can access it, and I'm going to use the password I just created. And these are just sample databases over here with tables. We can create a new database if we want. I'm not going to do this now. This is the next chapter. So let's see, what should we do? Let's just create a directory, and let's just call it test. Now we can do whatever we want here. I'm just going to create a new text document and call it index.html, and I'll open it, and I'm just going to write testing, save that. So now I can go to localhost/test, and we get our index.html file. Now I can change this to index.php, and now if I reload, it's still working. Now we couldn't run this index.php file anywhere else on our system. It has to be in our web server htdocs. If I copy it here and paste it on the desktop and try to open it, I'm going to try to open it with I'm going to open it with Chrome. It says testing, but this wouldn't parse PHP. So actually, let me prove that to you so you know I'm not lying. Let's say PHP echo test. So I'll save that and reload, and it actually has the text. It shows the text of the PHP tags. So if we do the same thing in our test on our server, let's open that up, save that, and go back to localhost/test, and you can see it's printing out test. It's not showing us the actual text in the file, it's parsing the PHP. So that's where we'll be building our applications. We'll have different folders. So now if you followed along, then your computer should be prepared to start writing PHP. Hey guys, so now we have MySQL, PHP, Apache. We have all this stuff installed on our local machine, so we can actually use it's a kind of like a local web server. So what we're going to do is go to Computer, C Drive, XAMPP, and I'm actually going to create a shortcut on my desktop right to the htdocs folder. So create shortcut. Actually, I'm going to do send to desktop. So in here we can create different folders. This particular section we're going to go over variables and arrays. So I'm just going to name this vars. Actually, you know what? I'll name them after the section. So this will be section, what is this? Section 3. So in here I'm going to create a new document or a new file and call it index.php. Remember, you have to have a PHP extension to use the PHP programming language. You couldn't use it in an index.html document. So we can open this not by clicking on it, because it'll just open in Windows locally. We want it to be on our server, which is located at localhost /s3, and that's all we need. Because it's named index.php, it works like an index.html. You don't need to add the actual file name. Okay, so you got a blank page here, and I'm going to open this in Notepad++, and we can start coding PHP. So we can have HTML set up, so we can create our document, our HTML tags, titles, head, just like we would an HTML document, and we can just insert PHP anywhere we'd like. We don't have to have this, especially if it's a PHP file that's not meant to display info but to just do things. You really only want to add this if it's going to be an actual web page. So in this case, I'm not going to use it. I was going to, but there's really no sense in using it. So variables. In JavaScript, we would simply say variable x equals 5. In PHP, we need to say $. We'll call this x equals 5. Alright, now of course this has to be, actually I'll show you what happens if you don't have PHP tags. It just displays the text. So we add our tags. Now we actually don't need the closing tag, and a lot of developers don't use it, but we're going to use it in this series. So now if I save it, it's not going to say anything. But we can echo it out. So echo out x, and it's going to give us 5. So echo works just like document.write in JavaScript. And I'm comparing, although PHP and JavaScript are very different and are used for very different purposes, I'm going to be comparing them because we've already learned JavaScript, so you do have a foundation with things like variables and arrays and loops. So I'll be comparing the two and showing you the differences. So we don't have to just echo out variables. We can echo anything. We can echo any string with quotes, and we can use double quotes or single quotes. It doesn't matter. Alright, let's see. We can echo out integers, as you've seen. So I guess that's enough on echo. So let's see. Let's create a couple variables. Let's say word1 equals hello, and word2 equals world. So again, I'm going to compare this to JavaScript. So we're going to concatenate, but the difference in concatenating in PHP is we use a period instead of the plus sign. So let's echo out word1. Now to concatenate, I'm going to use a dot and then quotes to put in our string, and then another dot to add on word2. And this string is just going to be a space, so we can space out hello and world. So if we save that, we get hello world. And again, we can concatenate a string. Let's say at the beginning we'll say I just want to say, and then we need a period. And notice I put a space at the end here. So you can see we can add on a string to a variable to a string to a variable with the period instead of the plus. Let's see, what else could we do? I guess we could do some math. Okay, so we can echo out num1 plus num2, and we get 5. So this is very easy stuff. So that's variables. Not too much more to talk about with variables that we don't already know. So let's move to arrays. So let's see. In PHP, we can assign an array to a variable. So we'll say cars equals array, and this is the common way to do it. In JavaScript, we would say new array, but in PHP, it's usually just array. And we can add in values here. Let's say Honda, and I'm sure this all looks very familiar from the JavaScript lesson. Toyota, Ford. Alright, so we can access these. You can say cars 0. So remember, arrays always start at 0. The values always start at 0. Alright, so you can go up to 2, which should be Ford. Alright, and we can concatenate just like we could any other variable. The period. I drive a Ford. Alright, easy stuff. Now, if we want to cycle through the array and display or do something, we want to use a loop. In PHP, most of the time you'll use a for each loop when you're dealing with an array. So we can do this by saying for each, and we want the name of the array, so cars, and then the as keyword, and then what we want to use as a variable inside of the loop. So in this case it will be car. So we're saying for each cars as car, and then we can echo out car. Now we want to concatenate a line break here. So if we reload, we get all of our array values printed out. So if we want to add on to this, it's going to be added on. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about is associative arrays, which are arrays, but they have not only a value, they have a key. So let's do this. Let's create an associative array that represents a car. So we're going to say car equals array, and we'll say the first value we want is the make. Alright, so we'll say make, we need quotes, and then we want to use the equal sign and the greater than sign, and then some more quotes, and we want to, so make is the key. Now we want the value. We'll say Toyota. Okay, so this is all one value. It has a key and a value. And so we can use a comma if we want to add some more. And let's make another one with the key of model, and that will be Camry. And let's add one more. We'll say color, and we'll say black. Okay, so we have an associative array with 3 values: the make, the model, and the color. And we can access this by saying echo car make. We get Toyota. Let's echo out the color, black. Alright, so with an associative array we can also use a for each loop. So let's say for each. Now the syntax is going to be a little different here. We're going to say for each car. Alright, so we're going to say for each car as key value. So now inside of here we can use key for the key, and then the variable value for the value. So let's do this. Let's echo the key, and let's add a colon and a space, and then the value, and a line break. Okay, so if we reload, now we have the make, Toyota, model, Camry, color, black. Now, say this was a real-world situation, we may want the keys to show up with an uppercase, and this is a little out of scope for this section, but just to show you, we can call a function called UCWords, which will capitalize the first word, and we can wrap the key variable up inside of that. And now if we reload, now we have the key with a capital letter at the beginning. Alright, so that's associative arrays. Those are sometimes called hashes in other languages. So that's pretty much it for variables and array. Hey guys, in this section we're going to be talking about PHP loops, and we're also going to do a small project. We're going to get the same information that we got back in the JSON and XML chapter. We're going to loop through a JSON file using PHP. So we've done this with JavaScript, so now we're going to do it with PHP. But first I want to just show you the fundamentals of loops and how they work. So I'm going to create a new folder called Chapter 4, Section 4. And for now, all we need is an index.php file. Actually, you know what? We can't parse PHP unless we're in the htdocs folder. So I'm going to get rid of that. Actually, I'll just cut it and then paste it right into my htdocs folder. And I'm just going to change that to section 4, S4. Alright, so we need our index.php. Now, you don't want to just click on this to open it because it won't parse any PHP. We get to this by going to localhost/S4. Alright, so we have a blank document. So I'm going to open that up with Notepad++, and I want to show you just a basic for loop. And we went over this in the PowerPoint, and we did this in JavaScript, and it's very similar. So we want to say, well, first we want to open up a PHP tag, and we'll say for, and we'll create a variable called I, and set that to 0. And we're going to say as long as I is less than 10, and then we're going to increment. Alright, so what I want to do for each iteration is just print out number and then the actual number. So we do that with echo, say number, and we'll put a space here. And then we want to concatenate our variable, so we do that with a dot. And then we can put in our I, and then we want another dot, and then we want to concatenate a BR tag. So if we save that, we get numbers 0 through 9. It didn't give us 10 because we didn't say greater than or equals to 10, so we can do that too. Alright, so that's a simple for loop. Now we can do a while loop. So with a while loop, we want to create the variable out of the loop, okay? And then we want to start the loop. We'll say while, and we want to say while I is less than or equal to 10. Then we want to do that same thing. We want to echo out number, alright, now we need to increment, or else if we don't put this I++ here right now, it's going to be a never-ending loop because I will never change. It'll always be less than 0. So we need to make sure we put that increment. So that does the same thing. I already showed you a for each loop in the variables and array chapter section. So what I want to do now is get right into looping through these JSON movies. So we need the actual JSON file. I think I have that somewhere. I'll just copy it. Alright, so we have our JSON file. We can take another look at that. All it is a JSON object, and the object has an array called movies, and then each array value has some fields and values for each movie. So the first thing we want to do here is, well, actually, let me just paste in some HTML real quick. We want the doc type HTML. Since we are displaying data in this file, then we should have the HTML structure. Alright, so up here we need to somehow grab the contents of that JSON file. We can't simply use a PHP include or require because we can only use those on other PHP files. This is a JSON file. So the way we're going to do this is we'll open up our PHP tags, and we want to create a variable. I'm going to call it JSON data, and we're going to use a function here called file get contents. Now what this does is it just grabs everything in the file. You could even use this on a website. You could put a URL in here and grab everything on that site. So we want to get the contents of that movies.json file. And I have the file in the same directory, so we don't need to add any files or folders or slashes here. So that's going to get everything in the JSON file and put it in this JSON data variable. The next thing I want to do is I want to decode the JSON so that we can parse it with PHP, so that we can use it as an array. So I'm going to create another variable just called JSON, and I'm going to use a function called JSON decode. And like it describes it, it decodes the JSON so that we can parse it. So we want to put in the JSON data variable, and then we want to just put true parameter. So now we can deal with this JSON variable. So I'm actually going to add a couple things here. Let's just add a title. And let's see, let's create a container. We'll do the styling last. So in the container, let's have some UL tags, because what we're going to do is loop through each movie, and we're going to add an LI tag at the beginning and end of each movie, all right, and info. So let's see, we can use this variable, this JSON variable. So I'm going to say PHP so let's work in here. So let's say for each, because we want to loop through the movies, so we got to say for each JSON array, an array value of movies, and this movies is coming from here. So we want for each movies as key value. So we want to get the key and the value. If you look at our JSON, what we're looking to get is the key here and the value here. So I want to have, if we look at the document, we have, actually we forgot to write to put the H1 tag in, so let's do that. We want the title as an H4, okay, because we're going to style it different than the rest of the fields. We're going to give it a background and add some padding. So let's put in echo H4, and that's going to have a closing H4 tag as well. So in this H4, I want to get the value of the title. So we need to concatenate here, and we can say value, and then what we want is the title. So in here we'll put title, and then we want to concatenate back. Okay, so now we have our H4 tags, and we should have the title in the middle. So let's save that. Alright, so we're getting the title and we're putting it into an H4 tag. The next thing we want is we want to start our list tags, because the list is going to contain the year, the genre, and the director. So we're going to say echo li, and in here we want to put the text year, and we want to put a space there, and then concatenate on value year, and then we want to concatenate the ending li tag. Alright, so I'm going to copy this, and the next line we want the genre, and we want the director. Alright, that looks good. So let's reload, and now we have the rest of the info inside of list tags. Now the last thing we want to do is just style this, because this doesn't look very good. So in the head, I'm going to open up a style tag and close it. So let's just add a few things here. The H1, let's center that. And the H4, which is the movie title, set margin to 0. Let's set padding to 5 pixels, and let's do the background, make that a little darker, a little lighter, Okay. So the next thing we want is the list items, and we want to say list style none. That'll prevent any bullets, and we want to do a padding left of 5 pixels. We just want to push it in just a little bit. And then finally we want to style our container div, which will have a width of 600 pixels. 600 pixels, yeah. And we want to set the margin to auto because we want it to be in the middle. And we'll set an overflow of hidden. Alright, so let's save that, reload, and we have our movies list. So as you can see, you can use there's a lot of different things you can use to loop through a JSON file, and PHP is one of them, and it's pretty easy to do. I think it's even a little easier than doing it with JavaScript. So just a very useful thing to know. JSON is getting bigger every day, so it's a real nice technology to have under your belt and know how to actually parse it and fetch data with it. So that's it for this section. I believe the next section we're going to be getting into functions. Hey guys, this should be a really quick lesson. This is going to be on PHP functions. We went over functions in JavaScript, and they're not much different in PHP. So what we need to do is go into our htdocs folder, which is our web folder, and I'm going to create a new file, a new folder called S5. Okay, so let's go to that in our browser. Okay, we have nothing there, so let's create an index.php file, and I can open this in Notepad++. And so let's create a very simple function. So we need our PHP tags, and we'll say function say hello. And as we know, we can use echo to print out to the screen. So we're just going to print out hello. Now this isn't going to do anything. If we go and reload, we don't see anything because we haven't called it. And to call it, we simply just have to write the name of the function with parentheses. Whoop. And no S. Alright, and I think I did this in the JavaScript, but we can add a parameter. We'll say it, and it'll take one parameter of word. So down here, whoop, gotta get rid of that. Down here we can say it, and we can put in a string here. Let's just put hello world. Okay, we can save that, and now we get hello world. Now we can have more than one parameter, so let's give this another one of word. So what we're going to do is echo the first word and then the last word right after it. So let's concatenate a space in between the two. This will be word 2. So let's put in 2 parameters. So these are going to be 2 strings that are separated by a comma. And the first one, let's say hello. And the next one, we'll say world. Undefined variable, word 2. Say it. Let's see, echo word 1. Oh, let's change this to, we gotta have word 1 and word 2. Sorry about that. Alright, so now we have word 1 and word 2. Now, what if the person only puts in the first parameter? We get an error that's telling us that we're missing an argument. And an argument is just another word for parameter. So what we need to do is we need to create a default value for this, for the second parameter. And I showed you how to do that in JavaScript, and we put like a conditional that said echo word 1, and if it's not there, then echo the next word, or document.write a default word. So in PHP it's a little bit simpler. All we need to do is make this equal something. So a default will be world. Alright, so we can save this and we reload now, and it's given us our default word. Now what if we do enter the second parameter? If we do, let's say the next parameter will be Brad. That will overwrite the default parameter and give us Brad. Alright, so if we get rid of that, it goes back to world. Alright, so let's do a simple mathematical function. So let's call this function add, and it's going to take two numbers, and all it's going to do is it's going to echo out num1 plus num2. So down here we can say add, and let's say 7 and 2. Now we don't need quotes because these are numbers, these are integers that are going to have, we're going to do arithmetic with these integers, so there's no quotes. So if we save that, reload, we get 9. Now a lot of times most of the time you don't want to output from your function. Okay, you don't want to have an echo inside of a function. Most times it's just bad practice. So what you would want to do usually in a case like this is you want to use return. Alright, so if we do this and we save, we get nothing. Return doesn't print it out on the screen, it just returns a value. So we can echo the actual function like this, and then we get our answer. Alright, so that's basic functions. I want to show you a couple other things in this section, and one of them is, you've seen it before, we've used the include function to actually include another PHP file. Well, we can also use require, and we can also use require once. So first we're going to go over include. So let's go to our S5 folder and create a new file and call it functions.php. And I want to open this up, and I want to take this. Now you might notice we don't have an ending PHP tag, but we don't need to, it's not needed. So I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to get rid of the inline function, and if I save this and reload, obviously I'm getting an error because I'm calling a function add, and we haven't declared this in this file, and we haven't linked any other files. So what we need to do is link the functions file, and we do that with include. So we can say include functions.php. Alright, so if we reload, now we get our 9. Now we can also use require. Okay, and we can also use require once. They all work. Now the biggest difference with these is how it handles errors, or how it handles if it can't find this file. If you use include, then if it can't find the file, the rest of the script will still go on. Alright, if you use require and it can't find the file, then the entire script halts and you'll just get an error. And I want to show you this real quick. So up here we're going to say include functions.php, and in my index PHP all I'm going to do is echo out something. So I'm going to say I am in index.php. Alright, so I'm going to save, and in my functions file I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say echo I am in functions.php. Okay, so if we reload, and actually I'm going to put a BR tag. If I reload, I have these two strings which are in different files. Now with include, let's do this. Let's change this to functions1. Alright, so it's looking for functions1, which is not there. It's not in my structure. All I have is index and functions. So if I save this and we go back and reload, you can see we get an error that says it can't find the file, but you can see this string is still echoing out. So my index.php is continuing even though that the include can't find functions1. Okay, so now if we change this to require and we save and reload, it gives us the error and everything stops. The rest of index.php doesn't continue. So that's the main difference between include and require. So what I want to do now is, we've talked about how to create functions and run them. I just want to quickly go through some of the common functions in PHP, functions that are here by default that we can use. Usually there's a lot of string and array functions that we can use in PHP. So I'm going to get rid of this, and the first one I want to talk about is string replace, and it's str_replace. And what this function does is it takes a string as a parameter, as well as the word or phrase that you're trying to replace, and then what you want to replace it with. So to give you an example, I'm going to create a variable called phrase, and I'm just going to write I like to eat apples. Okay, so we have this string. Now what if we want to change this to I like to eat oranges? String replace would be a perfect method to do this with. So we can actually redeclare the variable, and instead of just typing the text, we're going to say str_replace, and it takes three parameters. The first one is what you want to find, so in this case it's apples. The second one is what you want to replace it with, in this case is oranges. And then finally we need the actual string, which is in the variable phrase. Okay, so now if we come back and we echo phrase, actually let me show you without this first. Let me just cut that out. So we'll save that, and now we see I like to eat apples. If I put that string replace function back and save, then it's going to change to I like to eat oranges. So this is a really handy function, especially when you're dealing with generated content. Alright, so now I want to show you a function, well, two functions actually. One is called implode and one is called explode, and they have to do with arrays. So I'm going to comment this out right now. And actually, I'm not sure if we went over commenting in PHP. It's really easy. If we want to comment out one line, we use the // If we want to comment out more than one, we can use the / and the asterisk. And then wherever we want to end it, we want the asterisk and the /. So the asterisk should always be touching the content. Alright, so pretty easy. Yeah, okay, so like I said, implode and explode. So what I want to do here is create an array. And I'm going to call it name array. And it's just going to be equal to just a bunch of names. Say Brad, Bob, like, whoops, forgot a quote here. Remember, these are all strings, so they're going to have quotes. And we'll say Michelle. Alright, so we have an array here, and I'm not sure if I went over print R either, but print R is what we want to use if we want to print out an array into the browser. So we can say print R name array. If we save that and reload, we can see our entire array. We can see the key, or the, in this case, the numeric value in the value, which is the names. So it's really handy to actually see your array in retrospect and see what's going on. But I'm going to comment that out. And what I want to do is I want to take these array values and make them a string. So I want to be able to echo them out and have this echo out. Okay, so if we try to echo an array, we get this array string to conversion, and then we just get array. So we don't see anything, any value when we echo it out. So we don't want to do that. What we can do is, let's make another variable called name string, and we want to implode this string. So when you think of implode, just think of, you have a string and then something squishing them together and imploding them into an array. Okay, I mean, at least that's what I have in my head. They may not make sense in yours, but that's how I remember it. Now when we implode an array, it takes two parameters. The first one is, what do we want to separate each value? So we need to put this in quotes, and let's just say we want them separated with a comma. Alright, so the next parameter, so I'm putting this comma here so that we can put in the next parameter, which is the array. So in this case, it's name array. So now if we come down and echo out name string, we can save that, and it's printing out, it's echoing out all the names, and you can see they're separated by a comma. If we want to add a space there, we can do that. If we want nothing there, just a space, no comma, we can do that. And then say we want them on a separate line, we could put a BR tag. So we can manipulate arrays and strings pretty well with these kinds of functions. So the next thing, we went over implode, so now let's do explode. And as you probably have guessed, explode is the opposite. We're taking a string and we're making it into an array. So I'm going to print out, I'm going to comment out this echo, and I'm going to create a new array. I'm sorry, I'm going to create a string first. So let's say car string equals, and a string needs to be in quotes. So let's just say Toyota, Ford, Nissan, Dodge, Kia, and Mazda. Alright. Oh, we need, sorry, I don't need those quotes. Alright, so we have our car string with 6 different makes of cars. So we can print this out with echo car string, and that's just going to print out the string we have. But we want to add these values into an array. So let's create a new variable called car array, and we want to equal that to explode. And this is going to take 3 parameters. The first parameter is how we want to get these values, what we want to split them apart. In this case is going to be a comma. Alright, so we want Toyota, and then the comma separates Ford, and then the comma separates Nissan. So that's how we're getting our values. And the next parameter is going to be the string. So it's going to be car string. And I think I said we needed 3 parameters, but in this case I think we only need the 2. Okay, so now we have an array. We can print that out with print r. So now you can see we have a numeric array that has our values in each position, in each value slot. So that can be very powerful when you're developing with PHP. Let's see, so some other ones. We have some arrays that can manipulate strings like UC words. So let's say echo UC words and wrap that around, let's say, hello world in all lowercase. And if we save it and reload, we can see that the UC words function capitalizes every word. We could also say another function would be string to lower, and that does the opposite. Let's say hello world in caps, save that, reload, and we get it all in lowercase. So these are very handy when dealing with generated content. We also have, there's a whole slew of functions for arrays as well. You already saw count. So let's say we want to echo out the count of car array. Let me just delete that. So if we echo that out, we get 6 because we have 6 cars in the array. Another handy function for arrays is sort. So we can say sort car array, and then if we print r car array, we can see that it's now in alphabetical order. Here we started with Toyota, Ford, Nissan. Here we're saying Dodge, Ford, Kia. So it's in alphabetical order. So you can sort that way. You can sort by number values. There's all different kinds of ways you can deal with and sort arrays. And I really suggest going to php.net, because every imaginable function and functionality of PHP is described in depth on that site. So there's some really great documentation. Maybe join some PHP based forums. Just really dive in, because there's just a ton that you can do in PHP. Next we'll be getting into databases, specifically MySQL, because PHP and MySQL work so well together. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next. Hey guys, today we're going to be going over conditional statements, so if, else, switch, and we're also going to go over regular expressions. And regular expressions can get pretty complicated, so we're just going to deal with the basics and how we can perform matches and all that. So I'm going to create a new folder inside of my htdocs web server, or web folder, whatever. And I'm going to call this S6. And I'm going to create my index PHP. Okay, let's also move to that in the browser. So localhost /S6. Alright, so conditionals. We went over this in the JavaScript section, and PHP isn't much different. So we'll go through this real quick. So I'm going to open some PHP tags, and I'm going to create a variable of x and set that equal to 5, and we can open up an if statement. So same format as we did in JavaScript. So we're going to say if x is greater than 2, then we will echo out we'll actually echo out, let's do the variable x and then concatenate is greater than 2. Alright, so if we save this and reload, we get 5 is greater than 2. So let's change this, let's change x to 1. If we do that, we get nothing. So we need an else, we need to tack on an else statement. So else copy this, and we'll say is not greater than 2. Alright, so 1 is not greater than 2. So very easy stuff. Let's see, let's get rid of that. Actually, let's leave the x. And let's see, what can we do here? We can use and ors just like we did in JavaScript. So let's say if, I keep doing that. We'll say if x is greater than 2 and x is less than 10. We'll say echo out x, concatenate. So x is greater than 2 and less than 10. So let's change that x to a 4, and we get it because x is both greater than 2 and less than 10. So this is very simple stuff. We can do an else if as well. So let's do that. Let's do if x is equal to 10, then we'll say x is 10. Okay, so then we want to do an else if. Now in JavaScript, for some reason you have to have the else and the if split apart like this. In PHP you don't, and I've always just had it all in one word. So it's just preference. So we'll say else if x is equal to 2, and we will echo out x is 2, and we can keep going if we want until we get the final else, which is just anything but the above, so anything but 10 and 2. So we'll just say echo x is not 10 or 2. Alright, so right now we have x is 4. So if we get a syntax error, unexpected is 2. Oh, we forgot to concatenate here. You see we don't have the dot. On line 7, unexpected parentheses, else if, else, oh, I'm sorry, I put a parentheses after else, and we don't want that. You only want the parentheses if it's an else if. So we get 4 is not 10 or 2. If we change it to 2, if we get 2 is 2, change it to 10, and we get 10 is 10. Alright, so that's else if else, whatever you want to call it. So next we have switches, and switches work pretty much like the ones in JavaScript. Let's do a real quick one here. We'll say x is equal to 3, and then we want to write switch, and what we're checking here is going to be x. Okay, so switch, and then we want some curly braces, and in there we want some cases. So let's say case 2. So this is basically saying if x is 2, then we want to we want to echo x is 2. Okay, and then we have to break, because if it is in fact 2, we don't want to keep going, we need to break out of it. So next we'll do case 3, and we can pretty much just copy this, except we'll say x is 3. Alright, so next, if it's not 2 or 3, then we want a default. And default will say x is not 2 or 3. Alright, so very easy switch statement. We reload, we get 3 is 3. Okay, because case is 3, so that's what it's doing. It's giving us that. Let's change it to 5. Change it to 5. Whoop. Oh, I'm sorry, I changed the case. I want to change x to 5. So we get 5 is not 2 or 3. Alright, so that's it for conditionals. Let's move on to regular expressions. What a regular expression is usually used for is to match something against something else. And there's a really good website or web page that really gets into regular expressions that I find to be pretty easy, especially if you're a beginner. And that's webcheatSheet.com/php/regularexpressions.php. So it tells us all about the basics, and here are some of this is the match syntax. Say we want to look for the word foo. Now, obviously, if we punch in just foo, that's exactly what we're looking for. It's just looking for the string foo. Now, if we have this little caret in the front of foo, we want a string that starts with foo. So that means foo has to be in the beginning. If we have a $sign on the end of foo, that means we want foo to be the last word or match in the string. So if we have the caret and the $sign attached to the foo, that means that we want foo when it's standing alone on a string. So it's the beginning and end of the string. Alright, now brackets, if we put ABC into brackets, then we're looking for A, B, or C. If we put A-Z in brackets, we're looking for any lowercase letter. So anything that's A to Z, that's lowercase. This is going to match any character that is not an uppercase letter. This here will match either GIF or JPEG. And this here, A through Z plus, means that there should be one or more lowercase letters. This expression here is saying that we want any number, dot, or minus sign. This here might look a little intimidating, is looking for any word of at least one letter, number, or underscore. So you can see we're looking for any letter we have A to Z in both lowercase and caps, so that's any letter, and then 0 through 9 is any number, and then or underscore. This here, we have the parentheses, and then we have brackets, and we have WX, YZ. So we're looking for either WY, WZ, XY, or XZ. And this here is saying we want any symbol that's not a number or a letter. And not is because we have this caret here. This final expression matches 3 letters or 4 numbers. So we have A to Z, but we only want 3 letters. That's where this 3 is coming from in the curly braces. And then we have 0 through 9, but we want only 4, because you can see 4 is in the curly braces. So these are some, there's a ton of, you can find any kind of expression you want. It's just the more you're narrowing it down, the more of the expression you have to type. And these are Perl compatible. So if you've ever used Perl before in regular expressions, and you'd have no problem with this. And the common function that we use in PHP is preg match. So that's how we can find something in something else. So you can see here, let's actually copy this little piece of code. So we're saying, let's see, actually we need the matches. So we're saying if preg match, and then whatever, we always want to have these forward slashes. Whatever we want to match should be in between these forward slashes. So in this case, we're looking for ELL. Okay, so we're looking for that anywhere. If we had a caret here at the beginning, then this would need to be at the beginning of the string. If we had a $, that would need to be the end of the string. All right, and what we're searching is this hello world. And this matches, this is just a third parameter where we can add this to an array of called matches. So let's just save this and see what happens. So we say match was found, and we're actually echoing it out. We put it in this matches array on the 0 value. So let's see, let's change this up a little. Let's put a caret here. Caret is shift and 6, the number 6 on your keyboard. Now this, we shouldn't have a match. You see, we have nothing because there's no matches. If we take out this E, this HE in the beginning, and I'm sorry, just the H, now we have a string that's beginning with ELL, so we should have a match. Now we have a match. Alright, so if we put the H back, and then let's say we want to search for hello, we'll put HELLO, that's going to come back with a match. Now if I take away the caret and put a $, that's not going to give us a match, because what we're looking for is, we're looking for hello to be the last string, or the last word in the string. So if I get rid of this and we make this just hello and save, we should get a match. Now even if I added a caret at the beginning here, we should still get a match, because hello is at the beginning and the end of this match, or the pattern. So let's look at some other regular expressions. Let's just grab this here, this ABC, and we want to put this in between the forward slashes. Okay, so if we save this, we get no match found, and the reason for that is we don't have an A, a B, or a C in this string. So what if we put HBC? And that should give us a match, which it's not. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to have an uppercase H. So now we get a match. So if I go back and I make that lowercase again, now we can add on a tag. I should be able to put an I at the end here, and that should find a match. And the reason is this I is a tag that's saying in case sensitive. Alright, so we're matching either an uppercase or lowercase HBC. Alright, so let's look at some other ones we have here. This one, which is any lowercase letter. Put that in there. So that gives us a match. Any character that is not an uppercase letter, that'll match. Let's see, any number, dot, or minus sign. Let's throw that in there. And if we save that, that shouldn't be a match. Alright, because that's saying any number, dot, or minus sign. Let's say hello 1. That should give us a match. Alright. So that's as far as I want to go on regular expressions. We won't really be using them in this series, but they're if you want a good foundation in PHP, then knowing at least the basics of regular expressions is going to help. In this section, we're going to go over PHP and object-oriented programming. Now, there are a few ways to program, and one way is procedural, which is usually what was used when PHP first came around. And then we have OOP, or object-oriented programming, which is it's just an idea of looking at certain things in programming as objects. And objects have properties and they have methods. So properties are kind of like characteristics, and methods are action. And methods do something. They're basically functions that are attached to an object, and every object has a class. So I know they might be some new terms to you, but hopefully in this section I can make you understand a little bit better how this all works. So I'm going to go to my htdocs folder, and I'm going to create a new folder called S7, and I want to create my index.php as we've been doing. Whoop, forgot the N. And I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call that classes. Now, we don't have to create this folder. We could just put the class file right in the root, but it's good practice to have all your classes together somewhere. Sometimes the folder's called libs or libraries. I'm just going to use classes. And we're going to create a class, and you want to name the file after the class. In this case, it's going to be car.php. So I'm using cars as an object just because we can relate it to a real life thing. It's a little easier to describe when you understand what the object is, you know what a car is, what it does, what characteristics it has. So I find it to be a little easier to teach object-oriented programming in this way. So we have our index file. I'm going to open that up with Notepad, as well as my car.php file. So we want to go to our browser, and we'll go to localhost/s7. Alright, so now we're ready to go. The first thing I want to do is create the class. I want to create a class and create some properties and some methods. So the way we declare a class or create it is we write the word class, and then the name of it, in this case, is going to be car, and the name of your class should be uppercase. And then we just want some curly braces. Now everything that has to do with the car object or the car class goes in between these curly braces. Now the first thing we can do is create some properties. So this should be pretty easy to understand. I'm going to create a property called make, and I'll explain the public in a minute. I'm going to create a property called model and a property called color. Okay, so it's pretty easy to understand. Every car has a make, model, and color. Alright, what this public is, it's one of 3 access identifiers, and 3 available access identifiers in PHP 5 is public, private, and protected. Now, what public means is that you can access this make property anywhere at all, out of the class, in the class, anywhere. It's available to anybody, anywhere. If we have it private, that means that nobody out of the class can access this particular property. You have to either go through a method that belongs to the class, or you can only use it in the class directly. Protected means that you can't use it out of the class, but you can use it in a class that's extended from another class. So if we create another class called Honda that extends the car class, then we could still use this particular property. And good practice usually is to have all your properties private, and then create a public method to get to them. And we're going to do that, but I just want to, I'm just going to keep them public at the moment. So I'm just going to keep this for now. It's just a class with 3 public properties. And I'm going to go back to my index file. And in order for us to even access the car class, we need to include the file. So we went over this in an earlier section. We're just going to say PHP include, and this is going to be, it's in the classes folder, and it is car.php. Alright, so now we've included that class in that file. Now to create an object, we can create as many car objects as we want. We just need to give it a variable, and we need to say it's a new car. So in order to do that, let's say variable car1. I'm going to say it equals new car, and that should have some parentheses. And the parentheses are actually optional unless you have a constructor that's in your class and you need to give it some parameters, but I usually just keep it there. So now we actually have a car object, which is held in this car1 variable. Now we can assign properties to the car, either a make, model, or color, from this file only because these are set to public. So let me show you how we would do that. So we can say car1 make. So this is this hyphen and greater than sign, which looks like an arrow, is kind of it's saying that we want the make of the car1 object to be whatever we want. Let's just say Toyota. Alright, so now we've given our car object the make of Toyota, so we can actually echo that out. Say car1 make, and if we reload, let's see, we say class car not found, index PHP on line 3. Okay. I'm sorry, we don't even have PHP tags. Alright, sorry about that. Brain fart. Alright, so if we reload this, now we have Toyota. Okay, and we can change this. Let's change it again. Change it to Honda. It's going to echo out Honda. So it changes the actual variable. Once we say that the car make is Honda, it's no longer Toyota. So we can't access this again after we redeclare it. So that's how you would use public properties. The next thing I want to do is add in some methods. So let's add a method. We'll say public, and now we want to name it, and I'm just going to call it start. So this is a method to start the car, And you can also imagine this as if we're programming a video game, because this is similar to what we would do if we were actually creating a game, race car game or something like that. So our start method, all it's going to do is it's going to echo out car starting. Okay, that's all it's going to do. So if we save that, and let's just get rid of this stuff, and we'll say car1 start. And that should actually have some parentheses. So if we reload, okay, we're getting an error here. Unexpected start t-string. Let me see. On line 7, oh, I'm sorry, we need to write public function. Alright, so public function start. Now let's reload it. Alright, so now our car is starting. It's calling this method from the index.php file. Now remember I said that usually you want to keep your properties private, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make these all private. And I'll actually show you what happens if we try to access them. So let's say car1 make is Ford. So let's save that and reload. And you can see very blatantly it says we cannot access private property car make. Alright, so what we need to do here is, let's say we want to set the make to Ford. What we need to do is create a method to do that. So we'll say public function set make. Okay, so this should have a parameter of what we want the make to be. And then all it's going to do is assign a make. So what we want to do is say this make. Now this is a keyword that you want to use whenever you're dealing with properties of the class. So if we're in a function, I'm sorry, if we're in a property or a class function and we want to access a class property, we need to use this. So all this is going to do, this set make function or method, when I say function, method, they use interchangeably. A method is pretty much just a function that's in a class. So we're going to say this make equals make, which is going to be what the user types in the parameter field. So we can save that, and then we can go to our index file, and now we can say car1 set make, and we can set the make. We can say, let's say Chevy. Alright, so if we save this and reload, we're not going to get anything because all we've done is set the make to Chevy. Now what we need to do is create another method to get the make. So we'll say public function get make, and that's not going to take any parameters. And what this is going to do is it's going to return this make. Alright, so now we've set the make to Chevy. Now we can actually get the make. So we can echo out, I'm sorry, we want car1 get make. Okay, so save that, and we get Chevy. So we set the make, and then we get the make. Pretty easy to understand. So the next thing I want to talk about is constructors. And a constructor is, all it is a method or a function inside a class that is ran when you create the class. So, I mean when you create an object. So here we created an object. We created a new car. Now a constructor, we can have something happen when we commit this line, when we parse this line. So let me get rid of these set and gets. And I'm going to create a constructor. So And the constructor should always be the first function or the first method. So we'll say public function, and it needs to have 2 underscores and then construct. Alright, so that's how you can define a constructor. So in this case, let's just say echo car created. Alright, so what's going to happen when we create a new object, a new car object, we're going to get car created printed out. So this document, this index page, that's exactly what we're doing. We're creating a new car object. So if we reload, we get car created. I don't know why that Chevy is still printing out. Wow, that's weird. Am I missing something? Oh, alright, I didn't save it. So we're getting this printed out just from instantiate. This is actually called instantiating the class or instantiating the object. Now we can also add parameters to our constructor, and we can do that in a way where we can actually set these properties without having to use set and get functions or anything like that. So let's get rid of these set and get methods, and in our constructor we're going to take up 3 parameters, which are going to be make, model, and color. Alright, now if you remember, if we want to access these, we need to use this. We need to use the keyword this. So we're going to say this make is going to be equal to make, and this make is pertaining to this make. So what we're putting in through the constructor when we create the car is actually creating the properties. So next we'll do this model equals model, and this color equals color. Whoop. Alright, so now let's save that. So all we need to do now is input those parameters when we create or instantiate the object. So we'll say Honda Accord and the color can be red. Whoop. Alright, so let's save that, and we actually, it's good we got rid of the set make or all the sets, but we should create a method to get properties. So let's say public function, let's say get color. So again, this is just going to return this color. Alright, so now we've created a new car. It's a red Honda Accord. Now let's say we want to get the color. We can say echo car1 get color. So if everything goes smoothly, this will be red, and it's not. It's undefined property get color. Oh, we need our parentheses. So we get red because we defined the color as red when we created the new car. Now we can do the same exact thing. We can create another car object. It just has to have a different variable. So we'll say car2, and we'll say this is a Honda Civic, and it's blue. Alright, so we can echo out car2, color is blue. So we're still echoing out the red, the car1 color as well, so we have red, blue. So that's basically, that's the whole structure of object-oriented programming, especially in PHP. We have a class which has properties and methods, and a method is basically just a function that's in a class. and we can have a constructor which runs when we create the object of a class. So maybe that might be a little hard to understand, but as we go in the next project, when we deal with databases, we'll be using object-oriented programming a little more. So hopefully that will drill this into your head, because once you get it, it's really easy. It's kind of scary when you first look at it, especially if you're not a programmer or if you're a procedural type of programmer, but it saves a lot of time and it gives you a lot of code that you can reuse, so it's really, in the long run, it's better. It's just better to program in this way. So that's it.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you like the video, do give us a thumbs up and share it. Also check out amazing discounts and offers on our premium courses in the description below.